Hello, this is Mark Sabatella from Outside Shore Music. In this video, I'm going to talk about what I call the 8 basic rhythms. And I kind of talk about this a lot, and you may have seen other videos here, but sometimes it takes multiple ways, multiple times looking at a concept before it clicks, or maybe you haven't seen this before and this is going to be new. The idea is going to be that there's really only 8 ways we can kind of group beats together if we look at the problem right. So, what do I mean by that? Well, first, let's look at the problem by saying, what if we don't have subdivisions of the beat? We only have note values representing whole numbers of beats. So we'll have quarter notes for one beat, we'll have half notes representing 2 beats, we'll have dotted half notes representing 3 beats, and we'll have whole notes representing 4 beats. If we take a look at that 4-beat grouping then and think about, well, how many ways can we divide up those 4 beats? It turns out there's exactly 8. We can either have a whole note, that's one note that takes up the whole 4 beats, or we could have a dotted half and a quarter, or we could have 2 half notes, or a half note and 2 quarters, or a quarter and a dotted half, a quarter, a half, and a quarter, 2 quarters and a half, or 4 quarters. And that's it. Those are the 8 ways we can write rhythms within 4 beats using nothing but whole numbers of beats. So that's kind of an interesting fact in itself, but maybe it doesn't it's not mind-blowing. It doesn't really help you out in any obvious way. Where it starts to help you out is when we realize that the same thing holds as we zoom in more and start dividing the beat up. So right now we just have note values representing whole numbers of beats, and we're looking at groupings of 4. Well, if we start dividing the beat now so that now we can have eighth notes, if we do that and we start looking only 2 beats at a time instead of 4 beats at a time, we're going to see the exact same 8 patterns, but just with each of the note values divided in half. So here's our 8 patterns originally. If I divide everything in half, now instead of a whole note, I have a half note. Instead of a dotted half and a quarter, I have a dotted quarter and an eighth. Instead of 2 halves, I have 2 quarters, etc. These are the same exact 8 patterns that represent really the only way that we can, or the only 8 ways we can fill 2 beats using note values of an eighth note or greater. So this starts to be more useful. And I'm going to come back to that in a second after I first observe that, yes, we can zoom in even further. We can start subdividing into 16th notes and look 1 beat at a time, and we're going to get the same 8 patterns again. That the whole note that had become the half note is now a quarter note. The dotted half quarter that became dotted quarter eighth is now dotted eighth 16th, and so on. So these are the same basic 8 patterns. Well, let's return to the version with eighth notes. The reason I find this one so compelling and so really worth dwelling on is that, well, a lot of music really is based on eighth notes. And this is also where things get a little tricky when we start trying to decide, well, how are we going to notate things? There's rules about trying to break up a measure and showing ties and showing beat 3 and these different rules that you may have learned about how you can write rhythms. And understanding these 8 basic rhythms as they apply to eighth notes in 2-beat patterns is so useful. So in 4/4 time, we're going to expect that each half measure is going to be one of these when eighth notes are involved. In 3/4 time, we'll expect maybe the first 2 beats to be one of these patterns, and then there'll just be 1 beat left over. There's all sorts of applications of this idea. The idea that my method that I use for describing how to do rhythmic dictation is all about first figuring out what beats the notes fall on and then recognizing these 8 basic rhythms from there. For more about that, you can check out the lesson I've posted about rhythmic dictation in my musicianship workshop in my Outside Shore music community, where we're working on aural skills right now. So I'm talking about In that I'm talking about this as an oral skill, something that you do by ear, but then we need to write it out. This is also about, though, how we notate things and how we read things. Once we realize that all the rhythms that we ever see are just permutations of these same 8 rhythms, then it becomes a lot easier to read music. It's just recognizing these same 8 friends that you've known all your life. Yes, there's rests, there's ties, there's triplets. I am oversimplifying a little bit when I say it's only these 8, but it's all based on these 8. So, this is just a little bit about these 8 basic rhythms. And if you want to really think about this and study it more, feel free to join us in the Outside Shore Music community, where we're talking much more about these rhythms as they apply to oral skills, ear training.